She wore a Marine uniform, not a name tag that said problem. But that's how they treated her. Until 4 men stood up. Danielle Freeman didn't have time to sit. Not that day. Not even for 5 minutes. 12 hours on her feet at Camp Pendleton. Half of them out on the range under the California sun, the other half dealing with a last-minute inspection, had left her body drained. Her boots were caked in dry sand. Her green work uniform had faded patches from constant use, and the fabric at her elbows had thinned from months of wear. Her name tag was scratched. Still, she wore it proudly. The clock in the locker room read 2:38 p.m. Her son Jalen's graduation started at 3:30. She had exactly 52 minutes to get across Oceanside and into that auditorium before his name was called. She grabbed her keys, shoved her arms through the sleeves of a light windbreaker, and jogged to the parking lot. She didn't have time to change. The thought crossed her mind. Maybe she could have squeezed in a quick rinse or at least swapped the uniform for jeans and a hoodie. But no, that wasn't the priority. She had promised him. And when you make a promise to a 17-year-old who spent 4 years waking himself up at 5 a.m. for basketball practice, who's never once gotten a detention, who helped cook dinner when she had night duty, you show up, no matter what you're wearing. She merged onto the freeway with one hand on the wheel, the other gripping the bottom of the steering column. Traffic was already building up. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, a message from her neighbor, Mrs. Halpern. We're inside. They started letting folks in early. Want me to save you a seat? Danielle shot back a quick voice text. Thanks, I'll find you. On my way. She took the Harbor Drive exit a little too fast, but landed it clean. She could see the school auditorium parking lot in the distance. A sea of folding chairs outside, banners flapping in the warm breeze, and a cluster of security guards checking tickets at the entrance. Danielle pulled into a dirt patch at the edge of the lot. No time to find a proper space. She shut off the ignition, took a breath, and looked down at herself. Her sleeves were smudged with oil from the weapons locker. Her boots were streaked with white ash. Her eyes had that tired glaze you get when you've been up since before dawn, the kind no makeup can fix. She reached up, pulled the visor down, and looked at her reflection in the tiny mirror. This is fine, she said out loud. You're his mom. That's what matters. She adjusted the name tag on her chest and stepped out into the warm afternoon. As she walked toward the entrance, a few people glanced in her direction. Some nodded, others just stared. But Danielle was used to stares. She wasn't out here for them. She spotted Mrs. Halpern near the back of the seating area and made her way quietly through the crowd. A few heads turned as she passed, like someone had stood up in church wearing muddy boots. A couple of whispers followed her, low but sharp. Still, she kept moving. She slid into an empty folding chair next to her neighbor and folded her hands in her lap. You made it, Mrs. Halpern whispered, smiling. Danielle gave a tired grin. I wasn't going to miss this. From the stage, the school band was tuning their instruments. The principal adjusted the mic stand. Danielle looked toward the row of black robes lined up near the gym entrance. She spotted Jalen immediately, tall, quiet, standing straight with his hands behind his back. His eyes were scanning the crowd. She sat up just a little straighter, but before she could wave or call his name, a heavy shadow blocked the sunlight. 2 men in security uniforms were standing over her chair, and one of them cleared his throat. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us. Danielle turned slowly. Both men wore navy polo shirts with the Crestmont High School logo embroidered over the chest. Not police, not military, just private security. One of them, the taller one with thinning hair and a tight jaw, had his arms crossed like she was a problem to solve. The other looked young, maybe early 20s, barely able to hold eye contact. Excuse me? Danielle asked, her voice calm. This area is reserved for guests of graduating students only, the tall one said. We've had some reports about a possible disruption. Danielle raised an eyebrow. I'm Jalen Freeman's mother. The younger one stepped in. We'll just need to verify that. Do you have your ticket? Danielle reached into her jacket pocket and handed him the crumpled invite, printed straight from the school website. He stared at it like it was fake. And your ID? She pulled out her wallet and handed over her military ID. The taller guard looked at it for a second longer than necessary. His eyes moved from her picture to her uniform. We're going to have to double-check with administration. Danielle gave a patient practice smile, the kind she used when recruits mouthed off during drills. I came straight from base. My son's walking the stage today. I'm not leaving this seat." The young one shifted awkwardly. The older one's voice tightened. "Ma'am, we're asking nicely. Please, step to the side while we sort this out." People nearby had gone quiet. You could hear the rustle of gowns and the scrape of chairs on the concrete. A woman 2 rows over pulled her daughter a little closer. Someone whispered something about causing a scene. Danielle stayed seated. "I've done nothing wrong," she said, quietly but clearly. "You can call whoever you need to. I'm not moving." The guards didn't budge. Then came a voice from behind them, calm, firm, measured. "She said she's not moving." The older guard turned, halfway annoyed, until he saw who had spoken. Chief Petty Officer Brian Doyle, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, sunglasses tucked into the collar of a light gray polo, sitting 3 rows up, and standing now. Next to him, 3 other men rose to their feet as well, 1 black, 1 Latino, 1 Pacific Islander. All silent, all steady. None of them looked angry, just present. Doyle walked slowly down the row, stepping over feet, squeezing past knees until he was standing just behind Danielle. "You know who this woman is?" he asked the guards. "She says she's the mother of a student," the tall one replied, trying to hold his tone. "She is the mother of a student," Doyle said, "and she's a gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, which makes her your superior in just about every way." The guards looked at each other. The younger one suddenly had a lot more interest in the ground. Danielle didn't move. She kept her eyes forward, her breathing steady. One of the SEALs, Alofa Nua, stood beside Doyle now. "Y'all called the wrong woman out today," he said, almost gently. The older guard's lips tightened. "We're just doing our job." "No," Doyle said, "you're not. You saw a black woman in a uniform and made an assumption. You're about to embarrass her in front of her son, in front of her community, in front of people who owe her respect, not suspicion." The crowd was dead quiet. One of the school staff came jogging over from the side, a lanyard around his neck, walkie-talkie in hand. "Is there a problem here?" Doyle nodded toward Danielle. "No, sir, just some confusion about who belongs." The staff member glanced at Danielle's ID, then at the guards, then back at the growing crowd. "There's no issue," he said quickly. "Thank you, ma'am, for your service. Please enjoy the ceremony." The guards backed off without another word. Danielle finally exhaled, but just as she settled back in her chair, Jalen's name came over the speaker, and he was already walking toward the stage. Danielle stood up instinctively, her eyes locked on Jalen. There he was, cap tilted slightly off-center, tassel swinging, his long strides carrying him across the stage like he was on a mission. For a split second, he didn't see her. Then he did. Their eyes met. Even from that distance, Danielle could tell something had shifted. His smile faltered, his pace slowed just enough to be noticeable. He had seen the guards, the tension, the quiet commotion. His mom standing, looking like she didn't belong. She gave a little wave, small, controlled. Just enough to say, "I'm here, baby. Keep going." Jalen straightened up again and walked the rest of the stage like a professional. Took his diploma, shook the principal's hand, gave the crowd a polite nod, but his eyes darted once more to the seat where the guards had just been. Then he walked off the stage and disappeared behind the curtain. Danielle sat back down, chest tight. She knew that look. She'd seen it in the mirror enough times. That flash of confusion, frustration, and restraint balled up and pushed deep. He was his mother's son, all right. Next to her, Brian Doyle sat back down too. He leaned over slightly. "You okay?" She gave a quiet nod. "Yeah, just didn't want him to see that." "He saw," Doyle said, "but he also saw how you handled it." She didn't respond. There wasn't much else to say. The rest of the ceremony went on, speeches, clapping, laughter in bursts, but Danielle didn't hear most of it. She was thinking about Jalen, about how hard he'd worked, about how she'd barely made it on time, about how they'd turned his moment into a mess. And she was thinking about those guards. She caught a glimpse of them again near the exit. The older one had his arms crossed, standing stiff. The younger one was on his phone, trying to look invisible. When the final name was called and the graduates tossed their caps in the air, the crowd erupted. Parents stood up, kids screamed, balloons floated. A brass version of Pomp and Circumstance blasted through the speakers, but Danielle didn't move. She was waiting. A few minutes later, the students began pouring out from the side doors. gowns flowing, faces flushed with excitement. Some holding hands, some filming everything on their phones, some already crying. And then she saw him. Jalen was walking fast, scanning the crowd. She stepped forward and waved again, more visibly this time. He made a beeline straight for her. "Mom," he said, pulling her into a hug so tight it lifted her half off the ground. She held him, just for a second longer than usual. "You look tired," he said, stepping back and eyeing her uniform. "I am tired," she said with a small laugh. "But I wasn't missing this." He looked down for a moment, kicked a loose pebble by his foot. "What happened?" he asked. Danielle hesitated. "Doesn't matter." "They were talking to you. I saw. I heard Doyle. You didn't do anything." She looked at him. This boy who used to fall asleep with Legos in his hands, who once asked if Marines get tired too, now almost a man, taller than her, his voice deeper than she remembered. "I didn't do anything," she said quietly. "But sometimes that's not the point." He nodded slowly. "Did you feel embarrassed?" he asked. Danielle smiled. "No, I felt angry, and maybe a little sad, but not embarrassed." He nodded again, biting his lip. "I hate that it happened in front of you," she said, "but maybe it's good you saw it, because now you know what to do when someone tries to take your space." Jalen looked around, at the guards, at the crowd, at the SEALs who were now standing off to the side, watching everything quietly, giving them space. "Doyle's kind of scary," Jalen said. "Yeah," Danielle smirked, "but in the best way." He laughed, and for the first time all day, it sounded real. But just as things were starting to settle, a man in a suit with a clipboard approached. Someone from the school's administration. His eyes darted from Danielle to Jalen, and the apology forming on his lips didn't sound like it was coming from the heart. The man in the suit extended a hand toward Danielle. "Hi there, I'm Alan Prescott, Vice Principal. First, congratulations on your son's achievement. Really impressive student." Danielle accepted the handshake, her grip firm but tired. "Thank you." Prescott glanced over his shoulder, clearly uneasy with the attention. "I wanted to personally address the misunderstanding from earlier. Our security team, well, they were just trying to ensure safety. Tensions have been high these days, you know how it is." Danielle tilted her head. "Tensions?" "I just mean it's protocol. We have to be vigilant. We apologize if it came off the wrong way." Jalen folded his arms beside her. "It didn't come off the wrong way. It was the wrong way." Prescott blinked. "Look, I'm sorry you felt uncomfortable. That wasn't our intent." Danielle's jaw tensed. "Let me stop you right there. I didn't feel uncomfortable. I felt disrespected. That's different." Prescott adjusted his tie. "I understand." "I'm not sure you do," Danielle replied. "If I walked in here in a sundress and sandals, no one would have said a word. But because I showed up in my uniform, dusty and all, they assumed I was trouble." Prescott glanced toward the guards, who now stood even farther back, pretending to be distracted by their radios. "Again, we regret the inconvenience." Danielle shook her head. "This wasn't an inconvenience. It was an insult. One you thought could be brushed away with a handshake and a vague excuse." Before Prescott could fumble out another corporate apology, Brian Doyle stepped forward, calm, controlled, but now with a harder edge to his voice. "Sir," he said, "you need to stop talking and start listening." Prescott hesitated. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. This isn't about your protocol. It's about a Marine, a mother, being told she didn't belong. Right here, in front of her kid, in front of a community." Prescott took a step back. "I'm not here to argue. I just wanted to make things right." Doyle didn't flinch. "Then do something. Retrain your guards, fix your policy, and maybe try saying sorry like you actually mean it." From behind Doyle, the other three SEALs had stepped closer. They weren't speaking. They didn't have to. Their presence was loud enough, solid, unshakable. Prescott looked around at them, at Danielle, at Jalen. He suddenly realized he wasn't just cleaning up a small scene. He was being watched, closely. His voice changed. "You're right. I hear you. I'll personally make sure this doesn't happen again. Thank you for your service. Gunnery Sergeant." Danielle gave a single nod, not because she believed him, but because she was done talking. Prescott turned and walked away, his steps faster than before. Jalen leaned toward Doyle. How do you all do that? Like, with just your faces? Doyle let out a chuckle. We've had practice. One of the SEALs, Luis Mendez, finally spoke. Your mom's tougher than we are, though. We just make noise. She sat still and made them nervous. Jalen smiled, but his eyes never left his mother. Danielle looked up at him. I'm sorry today got messy. He shook his head. Don't be. It just made me prouder. But just as those words settled, a camera flash went off to the left, and Danielle realized someone had recorded the entire confrontation from the moment the guards approached to the moment the SEALs stood up. Danielle turned toward the source of the flash. A teenage girl in a black hoodie was holding up her phone, nervously checking the screen. Her father stood behind her, whispering something, but she didn't lower the phone. She was already uploading the clip. Danielle's first instinct was to walk over to ask the girl not to post it, but Jalen touched her elbow gently. It's out there already, Ma. People saw it. It's not on you. She looked at him, unsure for a second. This was your day. I didn't want anything to take that from you. He shook his head. You didn't. You gave it more meaning. Behind them, the video was already spreading like wildfire. Parents who'd been near the back started murmuring. One woman pointed at Danielle and said something to her husband. A man in a suit gave her a thumbs up as he passed by with his daughter. Brian Doyle pulled out his phone and tapped a few times. Already being shared on a couple military boards. Someone's calling you the silent Marine mom. Danielle blinked. What? He grinned. You've got a fan club. People love truth that doesn't need yelling. Fan club? No thank you, she muttered, half laughing, but she could feel the attention shifting. Not everyone stared with suspicion anymore. Some nodded at her as they passed. Others smiled, subtle but real. She wasn't chasing any spotlight. All she wanted was to see her boy walk that stage. That's it. But now the story was out, and the truth had a way of making its own noise. One of the teachers, an older black man in a wrinkled blazer, walked up slowly. Gunnery Sergeant Freeman? She turned. Yes? I saw what happened. I've been here 19 years, and I've seen too much like it. But I want you to know, my grandson is here today, and I told him to look for strength in people who stand up quiet. So thank you. She swallowed, unsure what to say. Just nodded. He squeezed her shoulder lightly, then disappeared into the crowd. Jalen leaned against the fence behind her. Think they'll talk about this on the news? Doyle chimed in. Oh, I'm sure they will. But they'll get it wrong. They always do. Then what's the real story? Jalen asked. Danielle looked at her son. His gown was wrinkled now, tassel half torn from where someone had stepped on it. His sneakers were dusty, but his eyes were wide open, curious, sharp. She paused. The real story, she said slowly, is about knowing when you're right and holding your ground when someone tries to take it from you, even if it's quiet, even if you're tired, especially then. He nodded. A few feet away, another parent approached with her daughter. I just wanted to say thank you for your service and for how you handled all that. My daughter saw it. We both did. You gave her an example. Danielle gave a polite smile. Tell her to walk proud, no matter what. The girl, maybe 10 years old, nodded fast, clutching her mother's hand. They moved on. Doyle looked at Danielle. You good? She gave a half smile. Yeah, I think I am. But just as they started toward the parking lot, Danielle saw the two security guards again, off to the side near a cluster of folding chairs, watching silently, as if unsure whether to apologize or vanish. Danielle saw them, the guards, standing off to the side, half hidden behind a row of leftover chairs and balloon strings tangled around a trash bin. They looked smaller now, not physically, but in presence. Like the authority they wore earlier had been peeled off by the sun. The younger one, dark hair, thin frame, glanced at her quickly, then looked away. The older one shifted his weight from foot to foot, like he wanted to say something but couldn't figure out how. Danielle stopped walking. Jalen noticed and followed her gaze. You gonna talk to them? She took a breath. I'm thinking about it. You don't have to, he said. I know. She stepped toward them anyway. As she approached, the older guard straightened his back. Ma'am, he began, but Danielle cut him off gently. I don't need a speech. He nodded, eyes low. I didn't know. I didn't look hard enough. Danielle stared at him. You didn't listen hard enough either. He flinched a little. I'm sorry. I really am. The younger one finally stepped forward. Me too. I just followed his lead. I didn't stop to ask myself why. Danielle's voice stayed even. You don't have to explain it to me, but maybe next time stop following and start thinking. That uniform you questioned? That's the same one worn by people who protect your right to stand where you are now. Neither of them responded. Danielle gave a small nod and walked away. Back near the parking lot, Brian Doyle and the other SEALs were saying their goodbyes. One of them, Luis, handed Jalen a folded patch from his vest. For when someone tries to tell you who you are, you already know. Jalen held it like it was something sacred. Then Doyle walked up to Danielle. You gonna be all right? He asked. I'm always all right, she said, smiling for real this time. He chuckled. Still stubborn. And still tired, she added, but proud. More proud than tired. Doyle offered a firm handshake, then pulled her into a quick one-arm hug. Next time you need a seat at a ceremony, just call ahead. We'll get there early. She laughed. Appreciate you, brother. They headed back to their truck. Just four friends fading into the background again. Quiet, steady. Danielle turned to Jalen. Let's get out of here. They walked to her dusty old car. Not much to look at, but solid. Like her. Inside, Jalen climbed into the passenger seat, held the patch tight in his hand. Can I ask you something? He said, looking out the window. Shoot. You ever wish you just stayed quiet? Like, not stood up for yourself back there? Danielle didn't answer right away. The key turned in the ignition. The engine coughed, then settled into a soft hum. No, she said, because if I don't stand up for me, who teaches you how to stand up for you? He looked at her. His face said more than his words ever could. She reached over and squeezed his hand. You did good today. I didn't do anything. You listened. You saw. That's the start. He leaned his head back on the seat. Let the day settle. They pulled out of the lot, past folding chairs and wilted balloons, past the guards, past the noise, back to their life. But before they made it halfway down the street, Danielle's phone buzzed. And this time, it wasn't her neighbor or a group chat. It was a number she didn't recognize, followed by a message that made her blink twice. Ma'am, are you available for an interview regarding today's incident? Danielle stared at the message for a moment, thumb hovering over the screen. Jalen peeked over. Media? She nodded slowly. Yeah, probably some local outlet. Or maybe one of those online blogs that's always chasing heat. You gonna answer? She didn't reply right away. The car was quiet except for the low hum of the AC fighting off the early summer heat. She tossed the phone gently into the center console. Nah, not today. Jalen raised an eyebrow. Why not? She looked over at him. Because what matters already happened. You walked that stage. We stood our ground. What's left to say? He leaned back again, arms crossed, that patch still cradled in one hand. You think they'll post it anyway? He asked. Probably, she said. And people will talk. They'll argue in the comments, take sides, type things they'd never say in person. Jalen cracked a smile. You sound like Uncle Ray. She laughed. Maybe he was right about some things. They hit a red light. Danielle glanced into the rearview mirror. Behind them, a father was snapping photos of his daughter on the sidewalk, both beaming. Graduation caps, hugs, silly signs, all the things the day was supposed to be. You mad it got messed up? Jalen asked, softer now. Danielle shook her head. Not messed up, just real. This is the world we live in, but that doesn't mean we stay quiet in it. The light turned green. She tapped the gas gently. People think the fight is always loud, she continued, but sometimes it looks like a mom staying in her seat while someone tries to shame her out of it. Sometimes it's just holding your ground long enough for someone else to see you. He stared out the window, nodding slowly. They pulled into a gas station just off the highway. Danielle stepped out, filled the tank. While she pumped, she watched a young couple argue across the lot. He was raising his voice. She wasn't backing down. Danielle didn't know what they were fighting about, but she could tell. The woman wasn't scared. She was standing her ground. And the man, he was learning. When she got back in the car, Jalen had his phone out. Ma, I was thinking, you should talk about it. Maybe not to reporters, but like, At the base or online, just people need to hear it from someone who gets it. She looked at him. You think so? Yeah. I mean, how many people freeze up when stuff like that happens? You didn't. That's something. Danielle thought about it. Not the internet, not the cameras, but a quiet room, maybe a circle of young recruits or single moms at the support group on base, even just one-on-one with someone who'd been through the same storm and never told anyone. Maybe Jalen was right. She pulled out her phone again, typed a new note. Hold your ground, not out of anger, out of love, for your kids, for your story, for the space you already earned. She hit save. For now, that was enough. Jalen grinned at her like he knew what she'd written. What? Nothing, he said. Just glad you're my mom. She smiled. Me too. As they pulled out onto the road, the last of the sunlight hit the hood of the car. She checked the mirror one more time. No guards, no stage, no crowd. Just her, her son, and the road ahead. Sometimes life tries to push you out of places you've earned. Don't move. Stay steady. Your presence matters more than their permission. If you've ever felt out of place, like you didn't belong somewhere you know you earned, speak up. Stand firm. And if you see it happen to someone else, be the one who stands beside them. You don't need a spotlight to make a difference, just the courage to stay in your seat.